next panel, we're going to be looking at the effect of AI and computers on education. And I have covered the situation of entrepreneurs, capitalist tech entrepreneurs in education and privatization of education in California and nationally. And the whole charter school movement has been a vehicle, actually, for private tech capitalists to take over schools, get funded by our tax dollars for privately run schools, and then test the students using their software in education. And I also had the experience going to the State Board of Education meeting and finding out that around the issue of charter school operators and how they were using technology, and finding out that the State School Board of Education, in the meeting, a teacher who was on the State School Board of Education was complaining about all the testing that she had to do, teacher. And the response of the chair of the State Board of Education, well, we have Pearson in board here. They're part of our operation here, and they'll take care of this. So you actually have Pearson, a company that makes money, profit from testing, in the State Board of Education. The integration of private companies in our education system. And this is why, where they don't have enough money for teachers, they're attacking teachers and cutting the number of teachers, but the money, the billions of dollars that are going into tech in education is massive, including Google and other companies who are not only teachers rely on, but also that data is being held and by these companies. So why don't our next panelists on education come up? Andy Libson, John, and Michael Hoffman.
So my name is John Klyczek. I'm a public educator. I've taught college rhetoric and research argumentation for close to 15 years now. I'm the author of a book called School World Order, the Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. I've got a small box, so there's a handful of them. You can get some copies afterwards if you're so interested.
I'm Andy Libson. I'm a school teacher at a charter school, Golden State Prep. I teach science at 7th and 8th grade. I've been teaching for about 25 years at what are called Title I schools, schools for students with their families, low income, and often students of color. And also I'm part of a group called What's Left that puts out a podcast about stuff like this, and a group part of Stop AI.
My name is Michael Hoffman. I'm a math professor at Cañada College, and I am a member of AFT 1493. I talk to Andy once a week usually, but also I'm part of a AI task force, and I hope that I can represent some of the work that my colleagues have been doing on the campuses to confront what AI means for us in our work and for our students' futures.
Can I ask my request again, though?
Yes, sir, go for it.
Yeah, so with that piece of paper, just remind you, because this will be important for my presentation, could you write, again, your name on it, and just one thing about yourself that you would be willing to share to a stranger? Not something so personal. That's my recommendation.
Thanks so much to Steve Zeltzer for inviting me here to speak. I'm going to try to be concise with this because I know that my colleagues here want to have more time to devote to the panel discussion. My presentation is titled here, Upswing AI, a case study in AI data mining for social credit profiling and social impact investing in the fourth industrial revolution. So I'll start off with a little anecdote about why I'm presenting on this particular company, because it took about half of my hours, tutoring hours at one of the public community colleges where I teach. So this company has an AI bot called Anna. You can see it up there. I'm pretty sure that's a cute little euphemism for analytics, because the main thing that it does is data mines all of the learning and wellness outcomes. So if you see that graphic up there in the upper left-hand corner, Anna intermediates virtual tutoring sessions, and it also intermediates mental health services, and then it's going to data mine those learning and wellness outcomes. And then it's going to take those learning and wellness outcomes and it puts them through a return on investment calculator. You can see all this on the website, so you can actually see their ROI calculator. And then they're going to convert those wellness and learning outcomes into retention and graduation outcomes that are quantified in terms of tuition dollars saved or gained, and then they're going to take those future monies saved or future profits and securitize them in human capital bonds for social impact investing. So if I click, there it is. All right. So basic definition of impact investing. What is it? So it's a type of investment where a nonprofit or for-profit company enters into a contract with state or federal government to achieve certain social impacts or social outcomes. So they could be educational outcomes, they could be healthcare outcomes, they could be criminal justice outcomes, they could be workforce development outcomes. And then to the degree to which those outcomes or impacts are achieved, those impact investment firms are going to make that money back or potentially a profit. And there are particular types of impact investment contracts known as pay for success. They're specifically designed for education, and there's provisions for those provided in the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, which is basically the main federal bill that oversees K through 12 education in the United States. So I got a few flow charts up there to sort of illustrate, and if I walk you through the one that's in the upper right-hand corner, you can kind of get a sense of the chain of custody, so to speak. So the bond is created from that contract between the impact investment firm and the government. So in the upper right-hand graph, the intermediary is the impact investment firm, the outcome payer is the government, all right? And then that bond is going to appreciate, so to speak, based on the degree to which the outcomes are achieved. And this is why you need the data, and this is why you need AI data to scale it, right? You're not going to be able to track this data in real time with a spreadsheet. So basically it works like this. You have, at the very top there, you have an investor. And the examples I'll give you are specific to Upswing. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds a company called Social Finance. Right? So Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're the investor. The intermediary is Social Finance. Social Finance is going to enter into that contract with the government. Then they're going to use that money to provide those social services, in this case, education and wellness social services. And then the data is going to get extracted from the needed populations through ANA, and then you're going to have independent validators that are going to assess the degree to which those outcomes have been achieved based on that data. And those independent evaluators are going to be consulting firms that look at environmental, social, and governance scoring, ESG scoring, which is basically corporate social credit scoring, and other sorts of sustainable development goal metrics and other DEI metrics as well. So, let's see. Here we go. So, this is not just a national phenomenon for the United States. This is a global thing, right? And these indexes are calibrated by global governance institutions such as the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And so if you look at ESG scoring, environmental, social, and governance, the social part is essentially, these are recursive and interchangeable. So the social part is essentially DEI stuff, the environmental stuff is the sustainable development stuff, the governance stuff is public-private partnership metrics based on stakeholder capitalism, which is developed by Klaus Schwab, who is the former chair of the World Economic Forum. But if you look at the SDGs, you usually think sustainable development goals are largely focused on environmental stuff, but if you look at goals number 6, 7, 13, 14, and 15, well, those are focused on things like biodiversity stewardship and natural resource stewardship. If you look at goals like 1, 2, 5, and 10, these are essentially socioeconomic and other equity issues pertaining to either gender or ethnicity, okay? And so these are going to be the metrics that are going to calibrate or basically look at the ANA data. So I figured I'd show you that sort of a roster of the various companies, social impact finance firms, and venture capital firms that are financing Upswing. So to start off, a few of these are worth noting. There are some heavy hitters that aren't technically impact investment firms, but figured they're worth noting. So the first is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Second is JP Morgan Chase. The third is the Lumina Foundation, which you probably never heard of, but I thought it was worth noting because on the board of directors we have the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Austin Goolsbee, who was also chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama, and he's also a member of the Order of Skull and Bones. Another one of these companies that's interesting to note is Google. It's not actually, Google itself is not an impact investment firm, but they have a Google Startups Accelerator, and that is a venture capital arm that also funds Upswing. Now, Google partners with social finance. Social finance also partners with the Charles Koch Foundation. And another one that's worth noting is Imaginable Futures. This one is set up by Pierre Omidyar. Pierre Omidyar founded eBay. eBay is connected to the Central Intelligence Agency. The Central Intelligence Agency is what created some of the first venture capital firms like In-Q-Tel, and it was In-Q-Tel that provided the venture capital dollars to create Google. And In-Q-Tel also provided the venture capital dollars to create Palantir, which is one of the premier AI companies today. That's Peter Thiel's, and Peter Thiel comes out of Stanford, which you see up there. Their impact investment fund is also financing Upswing. So last slide here is just more of these, and I'm not going to go ahead and explicate them. I actually just made a longer video report sort of detailing all this. If you go to my YouTube channel, it's School World Order, you can actually, I'll break down each of these VC and impact finance firms just so you can see their portfolios and whatnot. But the main thing I want you to take away here from this presentation is that AI is not just about automating labor in order to consolidate the means of production. Ultimately, it's about scaling ubiquitous biopsychosocial data mining in order to amass predictive analytics that can be monetized to create new human capital bond markets for the new social impact finance economy of the fourth industrial revolution. Stated differently, the AI endgame is all about upgrading from surveillance capitalism to a techno-feudal panopticon in which workers and consumers are converted into literal human resources and indentured into algorithmic bondage to be bought and sold like digital chattel in the global social credit economy of the fourth industrial revolution. And that's my presentation.
Well, all the stuff John said kind of makes a lot of what I was going to say irrelevant. However, I'll say that in my entire life being an educator, I grew up in South San Francisco. I was born in 1980, so I lived through, No Child Left Behind and all the various things that came after. So my entire aware life, there's been a conversation about how to get enough value out of education. And so I've been teaching at a community college for about, I can't keep track anymore, I'm just kidding. I teach math, but I can't do the subtraction. But in that time, there's also been waves of reform that early on in my career, I was enthusiastic about. One of the things that comes up when we talk about AI in education is you have people who say it's destroying education. And I think, what about the current thing did I want to keep? What was it that I actually think is valuable in education? So when I think about our role in higher education specifically, that's where I work, that's the system I know. I can make general comments about education, but higher education in particular is a place where workers go to improve the value of their labor on the labor market. So our job as educational workers, ostensibly, this is the sort of the bare bones transaction of it all. The students show up and obey. The professors bestow grades. The grades actually help to sort and rank the students into the right role for them in the economy, and then the students can go out into the workforce and charge more for their labor. And that, to me, is the fundamental economic process that we're engaged in. So in that sense, professors and higher education workers do have a sort of perceived economic power over our students. Right? We can basically determine how long it takes them to get through to where they have that labor value certificate that they can have, therefore, then access to the jobs. And all of that stuff I would be fine with completely destroying if there was some real human process replacing it. Because the thing about education that I think is the most powerful and lovely thing is that it's about human beings connecting with the learning that has been accumulated by other human beings. And therefore the process of education is a joy. It's a part of it. Being a human. It is so enriching to see, not to see, to work with and develop alongside other human beings, to learn from our past, learn from our shared past. So I like to think of the stuff that we talk about as like being, the content of higher education. Now, a lot of it is complete bullshit, but there's a lot of it that's also our birthright as human beings, like understanding how people thought through and solved mathematics problems and other basic problems of human life is something that every human being, I think, has a right to access. Now, it's that part that I think AI is specifically undermining. Why has AI gotten so much investment? And I'm gonna, I think, get into, maybe we can have some debate about the role of these different factors. Because I think there's a part that I feel like has led to the dynamic that John was talking about. But if you're a financial capitalist, you're looking at how much money do we spend reproducing labor. In fact, if you're a business owner, chances are the thing that you're most worried about is making payroll. Any part of any budget. It's these darn human beings. They're so expensive in this production process. So imagine if instead of having to every year get these babies up to speed with the vast, with the history of human knowledge, and instead just train one or a few machines that you teach them once and they never forget. That sounds like, you look at the size of those education budgets and it looks like some loot. Looks like something really, really profitable to get into. So I feel like we've been led to the point where now AI can completely undermine the basis economically of our work, because we've been led along in, what the kids might call the neoliberal revolution, or the complete financialization and transactionalization of everything, which was made possible by further quantifying all of these different metrics. Remember when we had to figure out what value exactly was added by education? We had to implement standardized tests to figure out which teachers are really adding value. The thing about it is that whole process was going on in all kinds of aspects of our lives, including the attention and the basic way we spend our days, what we pay attention to. So technology, having captured so much of our attention already, was now ready to completely commodify it. And it also means that the human role that education can play becomes even less important. It becomes much more important, the other kind of aspects of education that John was talking about, which is essentially, what do you do with the surplus population that can't necessarily be integrated into a profitable working arrangement? So we, in the education field, I would say, especially in my community college world, we feel that we are helping students attain some kind of social access. People see themselves not as workers, but we're like privileged priests that introduce the students into the world of high-paying jobs. And that has just become so much more obviously fake, when the whole point of all this AI is to not have more jobs, is to have no more jobs, especially not for intellectual labor, because that's the easiest part to automate. So, I feel like we're fucked. Sorry if I'm not supposed to curse, Steve. Are you allowed to? I feel like you should be able to swear on labor TV. You know, I don't know. But we're also fucked because people believe that there really is no point in even thinking that we could somehow have a different arrangement. People are have so given up on this idea that we can make some kind of broad demand, that it could be arranged in some other way, that the technology is just inevitable, and you have to get on board, you have to stay relevant, professors, you must stay relevant, you'd better learn how to turn AI into something positive in your classrooms, which all of our institutions are rushing towards, including the International, my own union, saying, well, let's just make sure educators are involved. And this is the predominant stance of educators towards what's happening in AI, is that they're like, well, if we just have a voice in implementing it, maybe that will improve things some. But what that means is that the whole concept of having a totally different model of education, I don't know, like one actually based on educational research, one actually based on cognitive science and human development. If we actually had a system based on that, then there'd be a lot more people just reading together and discussing and creating things together, and it wouldn't be so urgent to get the right scores and turn in this paper and that paper. For what? To prove your worth to the world of capitalists. That is what school has become. And I would say what I want is for people to realize that if we can't even organize our colleagues to win a cost of living increase, if we can't even stick up for ourselves for basic little things, then the idea of us sitting at a table and having a student-centered rollout of AI, or we should call it faculty-centered, right? Because that's what they're trying to tell you. You can have faculty-centered AI. I mean, the people are sort of forced to believe this, because if you don't believe there could be any other possible way, then you're just going to accept what's happening. So I believe in that human connection, and I see the possibility of people understanding that what's happening in the educational system is what's happening to workers, which is automation is strengthening the managerial control over every aspect of our lives. And we are becoming more and more economically irrelevant to them, and that is what they want. They don't want to have to pay us to teach people basic stuff. They don't. But I have to say that I'm hopeful, because there's a growing anger and a growing militancy, I would say. But those voices are still organizationally marginal. So how do we build organizational capacity behind the idea that we don't need this stuff? These chatbots or agentic things are actually really just there to replace us. And we don't want that. We actually want the really good human part. We want to create stuff together. We think people should have time to read wonderful books and talk about them, and then write their own books. They should have time to do that. They should have time to have debates about history. And we should also have time to use those debates about history to discuss what we actually want now. We should have the power as working people to demand what we want now. But I'm not sure really how we get there. All I know is that there appears to be potential, but I don't see how that power is going to develop into something coherent. And I don't claim to know. So, I don't fucking know what to do exactly. But I do know what I want. And I know that a lot of people share in that vision of what I want, which is a world where people are basically taken care of so that we can enjoy all of the amazing things about being human, and we can spend a lot of our time passing that on to each other, creating and learning together, solving real problems, not just trying to optimize the return on investment of fictitious capital. And so I just want to thank my colleagues who are not here today, unfortunately, but have been working really hard trying to figure this out. Trying to implement solutions that, a lot of people are talking now about, like, we're just going to go back to paper grade books. And we're just going to, go back to paper grade books, print our own workbooks, and do education like that. But there's a political shift that has to happen with professors. If that is going to develop into some kind of solidarity, we have to let go of our role of being the arbiters of labor value. Our role in ranking students about how valuable they are to the labor market. If we let go of that and focus on the real human connection and development of people, and forgive people for being, just forgive people for being annoying and broken and all these things that professors end up complaining about. If we can do that, education can be a site for some radical politics, but I think that it's really up to the entire status of class struggle in order for us to really turn this around. But I do think a vision of a world that is for human needs includes an educational system that looks very different.
Like Michael, I do believe we're effed as well. And I think, after listening to what John is saying, I am a teacher, but my understanding of my job, in part now, as a teacher who teaches about 150 students total per day, my job is to help organize the data collection of those students so that data can be sent and centralized and looked over by Lumina, Bill and Melinda Gates. Who were some of the other that were mentioned?
Google, the Stanford Impact Investment Fund, Social Finance,
Right.
Impact America, NextCube, Sustain VC, Village Capital, Boston Capital, Rethink Education.
And so that is how I now understand my job, whether I like it or not. I'm against that, but that is what I do. And I want to do something to talk a little more, because I think I will talk about AI, but I want to talk more deeply about the infrastructure that AI is on. And to do that, we're going to have to go to those pieces of paper that you wrote on. Does everyone have that piece of paper that you might have written something on about yourself? Can you do me a favor and just find one person to swap your pieces of paper with? You're trading. And it can only work if you have paper. Some don't have access to paper. That's another thing we have as a problem in our society. Now, so I believe what you've done is now exchanged information with a stranger, somebody you didn't know. And I think many people, and many of our students think that this is what they're doing when they send a text or send an email or something like that. Like they think they're exchanging information with you. They're communicating, right? And I don't think that's what they're doing. Here's what I think they're really doing. Brandy, would you do me a favor? There's a whiteboard there, right? Could you put down your name and your information on that whiteboard?
It's going to be like 555, right?
And could you put the information down? Don't share with anyone, except I'll put that. And could you write down the information of this person who you had the message with? Because what I'm going through is what I think is really happening with communication today, and what we're doing on this infrastructure, even before I get to AI. Okay, so you have that written down, correct?
Yes.
If you thought of that person not as Randi, but as Mark Zuckerberg, or Elon Musk, or who's the dude who has an alphabet? Pashai.
Yeah.
Yeah, this dude Pashai. You'd have a better understanding of who actually you're sending your information to, that information to. They're the one who has that, all right? Now, can you let us look at it? Because I'm the head of the CIA. All right, okay, that's good. And this is the head of the FBI, also looking at it, all right? And the other thing,
What am I, Andy?
you can just be Trump.
Sure.
And this was done not just under Trump, this was done under Biden, this was done under Obama, this was done under Clinton, Bush, all these folks. We were doing this. We were giving that, you can go back now. You were using a person like Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, you were sending them a note that they had. That piece of paper in your hand doesn't exist. You didn't have that piece of paper on your hand because you never wrote on anything real. It only existed for them. It only exists for them. They have complete control over it. And this is one thing I think it's really important to understand about the infrastructure we're on. It's not ours. It's ours. It's CIA's, FBI's, NSA's. You can be NSA.
Oh, yeah, NSA. Yeah.
And it's collected to us through these people who head up these corporations. Now, the other thing to understand is, like, when you're looking at that, if you look at that piece of paper, and if you look at your phone, are you looking at the same thing? You're not. When you look at a piece of paper, when you look at other humans, I'm a science teacher. You are looking at reflected light. Some of that light is absorbed by the person, and some of that light comes back to you and it goes to your eye. But when you are looking at a screen, before we talk about what do they recognize about a screen, you are not looking at reflected light. You are looking into the sun. You are looking at a light bulb. You are looking at what's called incident light. And all of our time as humanity, whenever we see stuff, we are only looking at reflected light. You may not think it looks different, but when you get home, look at a book for 5 minutes, and then look at your screen for 5 minutes, and tell me it's not a different experience. This is what we are asking our students to do. No, we're directing our students to do. This is what we ourselves have trained ourselves to do, even though it wasn't how we were raised. But we are raising an entire generation, before I even talk about AI, on an inhuman infrastructure that is not only is it not natural, it is bad for us. And secondly, we are telling them that they're actually communicating to each other, but they're not. Their information is being centralized to their enemies, to people who mean them no good, and it's owned by them. You don't have it. It was never written down on a piece of paper. It never appeared except for in the hands of Mark Zuckerberg, that guy Pashai, whatever. These heads, that's where it exists. And so I do think it's important when I deal with this subject matter, for me this goes much deeper than AI. I am a Luddite. I do believe we have an entire infrastructure that's going to have to be disposed of because it's unhuman. Now, some of the things that I'll say about what I think is happening in public education that is connected to this unhumanness that we as teachers are leading people into, that we are directing them and teaching them how to be part of. It comes from a woman named Alison McDowell. How many people have heard of Alison McDowell before? Okay. Well, in 2017, sorry. 1917. Interesting year. In 2017, she did a presentation on future-ready schools. And she was talking about what she saw happening with the digitization of all this stuff and why she thought it was a problem. And the first thing she laid out is this infrastructure is not our infrastructure. It is defense industry infrastructure. And it was designed for war making abroad and war making on us. So she said, none of this stuff is actually good for us. That's the first thing she said. The other thing she said is, the plan as she understands it is to actually end brick and mortar schools. Like, and she's talking about that in 2017. The plan is to get everyone online so that eventually you'll be only at your home, separated from everyone else, and online, and basically, how did she put it? Collecting, basically doing cradle to grave education, meaning you'll have your information on a digital dashboard. You are no longer going to have a physical school to work in. There won't even be really colleges to get degrees from. You're going to do badges, and those badges are going to tell your employer you're ready to be employed for whatever it is that you will get. And because the job market is going to be so changing all the time, because she had predicted the development of AI, and she was talking about things she was reading corporations saying, is that we have to prepare humans to be able to flip what they can do anytime they want to. That's why it was called cradle to grave education, because you're never going to be able to be standing put with just one career. You're always going to have to be changing. And so this was a development that she was talking about in 2017, and I think we're seeing it happen. All the stuff you're seeing happen with OUSD and their budget cuts, or San Francisco Unified School District and their budget cuts, those are not a bug. It's a feature of what is a controlled demolition of education, which is taking place. And what's happening for educators is, as more and more resources are taken from that, we're finding that our jobs are like I teach chemistry to a set of 8th graders, or no, physics to a set of 8th graders, chemistry to a set of 7th graders. I teach an ELD class to students who are learning English as a second language, and that happens all in one day. And I can do that because I've been teaching for 20 years, and I can manage that load of doing all of that in one day. But when I lose my job, or when I retire, they're going to have to find somebody as a new teacher who's going to teach 70 students chemistry in one day, 70 other students physics in one day, and another 30 students ELD. That's going to be very hard to find.
What is ELD?
English is language development, basically. It's for students learning whose families speak Spanish.
English as a second language.
Yeah, families primarily speak Spanish or Chinese, and I'm trying to help them acquire English. That is difficult for an experienced teacher. It's unsustainable for any new teacher. And in the context of what's happened with people when we locked out the schools and sent everyone onto computers to be there, that again was not just an accident. That was another part of the controlled demolition of education, so that people got used to and people could get a sense of, here's how your future is going to run. That's what people call COVID was really about getting everyone to experience this world that we were being directed to. They thought they were going to get us to, I believe they thought they were going to get us to there earlier. I think they're having to slow their roll a little bit, but you can see we're moving, since 2020, we're moving very quickly into this world of AI and stuff like that. So, as a teacher, this is what I see happening. And even though I'm against trying to bring computers into the school, or trying to have students on computers, like, there's not enough working photocopiers for me to actually give paper to all the students who I want to read something. They will have to sometimes read something on a computer. And I give, as a teacher, they take standardized tests on a program called iReady, which basically collects all the data on what they do, learns about how they're learning, because if you get a problem wrong, it makes the next problem a little easier. If you get a problem right, it makes the next problem harder. This thing is learning about them. And it's basically training them. Or it's training my replacement, really. And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of another feature of this is something called digital twins, which is something else Alison McDowell talks about. Does anybody know what a digital twin is? So, a digital twin is, the idea is, well, if a computer can simulate a building by knowing what it's made of, or simulate a space by recognizing, like how is something structured, you can do something with it. Well, digital twins aren't just being made of offices or universities or infrastructure. Each of us is producing our own digital twin on the data that's collected on us. And that's a big thing, particularly for students right now, is all the things that they're doing on a computer is data collected not just for data mining and things like that to train AI, it is also them producing a simulation of themselves for AI to basically both kind of say, well, here's who I think you are. Here's if I want to adjust what you're going to do, I'm going to give you a prompt to see if I can get you to go that way, make a prediction of how I can direct you, control you. But ultimately, it is them simulating us to really control us, to remake us, essentially, in the digital world. And those things, to me, are like completely inhuman. And I would say that, like, being part of that, for me, is like something we have to fight. Well, what does that fight look like? Currently, I would say, and this is the reason I asked you the question about how much do your colleagues recognize what's going on. I feel like there's literally no recognition among my peer educators of what we're doing, of what we're truly actually up to in the education system. The American Federation of Teachers recently agreed to work with Anduril, Anthropic, that's right. Anthropic and Google,
Google, and I believe OpenAI.
OpenAI, right, to integrate the use of it. Train 100,000 teachers on how to bring AI into the workplace. And I don't think unions are like that upset about that. And most of the teachers who I know use ChatGPT or some sort of AI to produce their slides and things like that, without any understanding that this goes well beyond students cheating on ChatGPT or something like that. This is us literally replacing ourselves as teachers, creating a situation where our students themselves won't have jobs, and our information of our students being collected so that the computers can have models of them, and then also just sell their data to the latest social impact company. The things that I feel like we can do, or I can do, is at my own job, they've asked me to teach a scripted curriculum, and I refuse to do that. Scripted curriculums are one of the ways that we're kind of training our AI replacement. If we can get all teachers to be teaching the same script, you can use that to kind of iterate a better script, not just for the human, but ultimately for the computer that's going to replace you. And that's something I refuse to do. The other thing was when they asked me, like, will I teach, I was at a recent PD, and they were talking to me about iReady, which is this program that students use that basically shows the student how to become better at math or better at English by learning about them. They asked me how many minutes would I be willing to use this program with my students, and I said 0. And that I was probably the only teacher who felt that way. But by and large, I, as a teacher, am trapped in a system that I don't believe in. I'm trapped in a system where, like Michael's talking about, my students are really a commodity to be trained so they can be exploited by an employer. And now it's gotten worse than that. Now I'm a data collector for all the people that John is talking about. And I'm very pessimistic about that changing until more of us educators actually come to that understanding of how deep the problem runs and how much we're going to have to do. But I do believe that paper and pencil are part of the answer. I do believe that doing things that don't allow our opponents or our enemies, like the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks or the CIA or NSA, to see what we are doing, I do believe that that is part of the solution. But that's something we're going to have to do together. How is that going to happen? I don't know. Will that happen? I'm pessimistic of. But I don't see any way around that if we're going to actually be able to recover humanity and be humans with each other. Otherwise, we're just going to have this sort of imaginary world of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the metaverse, where we think we're communicating with each other, but we're not. That's it. Thank you.
I remember Michael talking earlier about, he doesn't know what to do, and mentioned that, we have to reach out to educators and let them know, like, this is exactly what's happening. So I want to hear from an educator's perspective, what can, socialist organizers and maybe even teachers within socialist spaces who already reached that level of consciousness, what are some ways do you think we could reach teachers and educate them on this, right? They clearly know it's a problem, but maybe don't understand the full depth enough to actually organize themselves. So what are ways that outside educators can reach out to these educators? These educators, they work long hours, they're tired, they're already trying to fight for time with their friends and family. So how can we fit into that equation, get that message so they can, light the fire, so they can start organizing against this?
I'll just say that I mentioned to my local adjunct AFT union, and I've presented them with a lot of data over the years, and I invited them to this event. None of them are here, so that's about what I can add to it. Michael and Andy probably can have more to add to this than I can.
I'll just briefly say that, to me, the fundamental thing is our groups of people learning and remembering the lessons together of actually trying to change conditions. So I phrase it that way because a lot of the institutions and also the practices we've inherited actually prevent people from actually thinking through what to do about it, executing those decisions, and then learning about it together. A lot of the legalities of our unions actually prevent open discussion and open decision making. So to me, the fundamental issue is I do think we have to see that there's an unevenness, like some of us will have a vision and want to fight. It's not going to be universal, right? And that's like what you're saying about having a certain consciousness, but we can't expect that from all of our colleagues. And just like in education, when we know that human beings get better at things we practice actually doing, right? In an authentic context, right? Which is, to me, the thing you have to practice doing in a very authentic way is try and have an impact on actual events. Try and win even just very basic things that a group of people agree on, and then assess together how that went. Right? So I think it looks different places, but you have to be using your own heads, and you have to be engaging people in the process of imagining something different, fighting for it, and then learning how that went. And it has to be honest. And there's a lot of shit that gets in the way of that honesty.
I think one of the questions this raises is challenging really a system. We're not talking about an individual industry or a company, it's a system. What we're talking about is capitalism. This is what we're talking about here today. This is the capitalist system. And the inability of our unions to have a discussion and debate on the introduction of technology is part of the problem. In Sweden, for example, the introduction of technology into the workplace has to only take place after a study. You can't just bring technology into the workplace in Sweden without a study. So, for example, when scanners were being brought into this country, they just did it without any regard to the safety, health and safety of workers. So, literally millions of workers, grocery workers, got carpal tunnel syndrome as a result of the introduction of scanners. In Sweden, this didn't happen because the requirement is you have to do a study of how this is going to impact people. Now, that challenges capitalism, and what we have today is total deregulation and an acceptance that they have a right to introduce technology wherever they want. And we'll talk about that as far as gig workers and others. So, in the case of the teachers' union, the teachers' unions have not only accepted the technology, they're taking money from these techno-fascists to actually commodify education. They took money on how to do these testing. Why would you take money on how to do testing when teachers can write tests, which is what they do in Finland? The teachers write the tests in Finland. You know that? You don't need Pearson. You don't need a company to do the test. You have teachers writing the test. But that goes against a system of capitalism, which is what we have in support by the Democrats and Republicans who fund their policies. And the policy of testing was the Democratic Party. Obama brought in the testing. I mean, in fact, the AFT and the AAA took millions of dollars from these companies, Microsoft, and how to do proper testing. Can you imagine that? How do you do proper testing? How about having the teachers do the tests? The teachers know the students. Isn't that a better way of having a public education system? This is the fundamental question. Who is going to control our society? So anyway, that's...
Someone up here.
Yes. Well, I want to try to respond to that question, because that question, as a person who definitely who sees capitalism and the theft of workers' wages, and the way that you're speaking of it is even a greater theft. Like you're not even getting wages to be getting like surplus value stripped off. You're not even getting anything. You're getting zero, right? So the level of theft now under capitalism is worse than it was when we were born, and we were born into capitalism. So with that situation we're facing, I ask myself the question what we can do. Because I do feel like in general, I have about 30 other colleagues at my work, and I do feel that a vast majority of them are largely okay with what's happening with AI, with what's happening with data collection. So what I try to do is make my opposition to Stop AI public. I have decals, I have stickers that I have in my room. Students ask me for those stickers sometimes. Why are you against AI, Mr. Libson? And I say, because it's going to take your job. And it's just stripping data from you. When they ask me about, like, how is that related, when SmartPass was implemented, when they had to fill in a SmartPass data to go to the bathroom, I showed them the profits that SmartPass was making based just on collecting data, and I said, if you want to fill that in, you can, but if you want a physical pass from me, you can take that as well. And many of my students take that physical pass instead of filling out SmartPass. And my principal wonders why your students don't have so much SmartPass information. And I'm like, well, they don't want to fill that thing in. So I try to make it public. And that was the things I did when I said that, like, I wanted to teach 0 minutes at that professional development when they were asking each of the teachers, how much time can you commit to using that? That was, like, I did that intentionally because I knew that that's not the answer they wanted to hear. But the reality is that even though I have made my opposition public, there's only one other colleague who I talk with this in any meaningful way about. And he's interested in this stuff. But the other teachers largely don't want to talk about it. And unless that changes, I think we are effed. And that's why I agree with Michael, that I'm very pessimistic about our situation right now.
I believe that gentleman with the black jacket, yep.
I mean, I was basically going to say the same thing, that it's clearly the system is the problem. It's capitalism and it's technology. But I was thinking, like, what are the kids saying in the schools right now? I know when I have kids, I've got a couple older. I've got one 21, one 18, and an 11-year-old or 12-year-old. And I know that they use their technology, but I think that they're also pretty aware of that there's a lot of issues going on. I guess we have that kind of discussion all the time because I'm really anti the technology. I would say too, when it comes to this technology. I have been for a long time, just as far as capitalism itself being a form of AI. Also, I remember when Fast Track came around, I was like, no, and I still don't have Fast Track, it screws me up all the time. but I just hate that technology so much. And so I guess I'm wondering, like, what are the kids, what are the students that you have? I mean, can there be more activists, or is there a way to kind of get them to start more educating to force the teachers down that path? Saying, no, we want something different for the future.
Do you want to go first? Or students.
I don't blame students for using it for everything, because mostly they're coerced into essentially a transactional situation. But I think it actually makes everyone sad. Like, I see students use it for everything. They use it for everything. It's basically, in their words, it's like it's the new better Google search. And also, there's also a lot of anxiety about their future, and there's a lot of struggling not to be in despair, especially if you pay attention to not only the job market, but also, the genocides and what's happening in the world. People are just kind of getting through, and they're using the tool that satisfies this transactional education process. But there are, of course, people who are critical and aware and want more meaningful things, but the way that it's set up is more meaningful interactions in education oftentimes is associated with having a harder time getting a better grade, right? The transactionality of it is now basically becoming the dominant feature. So it's not about, and I would argue it's never been completely about teaching people things, certainly not in the 21st century. It's not just about actually people learning things. It's about essentially habituating them to the world that they're supposed to exist in. And I don't see administrators really minding. Like, I don't think administrators care as long as the metrics look good. If we could just post the prompt and the students give a paper and then it's rated high, then the institution's fine with that. So I didn't quite answer your question directly, but I do see students using it for everything, and I also, there's a mixture of responses to that. And that's in college, too. I have to say, this is not in a highly regulated environment like in K through 12.
Yeah, I'm middle school, and I would say I have my Stop AI sticker on my phone, and none of my colleagues ever asked me about that except one. But when I post my little Stop AI sticker on the poster that I had around this group I was in, and I had Stop AI stickers on my desk, I would say about 8 or 9 students have said, can I have put up some of those stickers? And there's an interest in it. And then some will ask me about it, but I don't think they yet understand how deep it goes. And so I would say at least there's more interest among the students than I have among my colleagues. I'll put it that way. But one interesting thing that tells me that there really is a possibility for resistance is, not many teachers, when they teach a lesson, they don't think that lesson, students don't necessarily remember it because they don't get it for the test the next day or a week from now, they don't get it. But that lesson that I gave them on how SmartPass worked, when I showed them the profits of Raptor Incorporated, which makes SmartPass, and I said, do you think they're making money from just from teaching you? Like, they're making money off of you putting your name on that thing, and somehow that data's going to them, and that's why their money's going up. And that left an impact. I taught that to 2 of my 8th grade classes, and I chose not to teach that to my 7th grade class. Well, I would say that to a person, that lesson, which I gave about 2 months ago, none of those students are going to using the bathroom with that SmartPass. Like, in fact, they'll raise their hand and they'll go, can I go to the bathroom? And I'm like, oh yeah, you can go. And then they'll come up to me and I'm like, why are you coming to me? Give me a pass. Because they've remembered that lesson and they don't want any part of that. So when I forgot that, I taught them that. So things like that make me optimistic that if we found a lane to go in and to travel in, where we actually thought we could become liberated by traveling down that lane, then I think we have a shot. Because students, they remember that lesson better than I do. And that is somewhat promising.
I just have to add that is a key part of the be honest thing that I was talking about, and I gave probably a very unsatisfying answer to the gentleman who asked what we could do. But don't pretend you agree and that you think it's great. Don't front to your colleagues or your students that this is like a world you're happy to bring them into, right? Teach the things you really, really feel matter, and use every ounce of your academic freedom, if that even exists, to be honest and raise debates. Don't just go along with, oh, well, everybody in the room seems to be. We need to develop our confidence in our human brains to figure things out and not just rely on unions or political parties or bureaucracies or shared governance bodies to solve the problems. Thank you,
Well,
Andy.
one of the things that I've tried to do is, so in my English 102 course, I usually pair it with Brave New World, and so it's like a sort of a gateway to just talk about a broader phenomenon associated with artificial intelligence. That's just technocracy in general. So we look at a lot of stuff on AI, data privacy. I show them the Journeyman TV documentary of the social credit system in China, so they can just kind of get to see a view of what surveillance capitalism looks like when it comes full culmination. And there's usually, you know, a student or so that hangs out after class and asks more questions that aren't just like, you know, what's due tomorrow. It's like, you know, want to talk about the topic. So, I mean, and one anecdote that was, I guess, uplifting a little bit was I was tutoring it was a couple weeks ago, and one of the students told me that they bought or somebody gave them a new laptop, and they had Grammarly plugged into it, which is like this AI bot that corrects all your grammar and stuff, and the student told me that it was so intrusive that she got rid of the new computer, went back to the old, because she didn't know how to get it off the computer, and it was like she couldn't type without this thing interjecting constantly, and it was like impeding her own, you know, thought processes. So, you know, that little anecdote, you know, I guess is uplifting, but yeah, if you can inject conversations having to do with these issues, you know, and make them entertaining, that's why I like to pair Brave New World, because it's a disturbing dystopic novel, but, you know, for those reasons, it's like a Black Mirror episode, right? I mean, it's engaging. So maybe those are sort of ways to inject that conversation into the classroom. Yeah. Jeff. Hey, how's it going? I think you need a mic, though.
This guy had it.
Oh, this gentleman did. He last us.
Oh, last one.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, he did have his. Yeah. Sorry.
I just want to make a comment. If the capitalist idea is to lose a large portion of the working class, labour class, then who are they going to exploit? There won't be anyone left. I mean, how are they going to make their money?
Well, in some ways, I honestly feel like at this point in the sort of late stage capitalism, it's essentially it's almost not even about profit anymore, as it's about supply chain management and supply chain stability. So it's just about keeping the economy, the gears turning at this point. I mean, they essentially have monopolized more or less everything, right? I mean, the Klaus Schwab quote, "You'll own nothing and be happy." So that might be the way to conceive of it, because I've thought about that too. Like, okay, so wait, where is the actual value in what's being produced? And it seems to be, there's a whole school of thought on systems dynamics and cybernetics that sort of integrates all this stuff into like centrally planning global markets, and you know, so that would be my answer. I think Steve said he had something.
Let me just say one thing, and then because that's something I think a lot about, and I do believe that while the capitalists run society, they're not in control of their system. The system directs really what's happening, and it compels them to essentially lower their profits by taking humans out of the equation. The more they take humans out of the equation, they don't think of it this way, but they are actually making their profits slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. You take all the humans out of it and make it all just tools, buying tools, profits are zero. Then capitalism literally is kaput. But they don't know, and they care, but they don't know, and that's where they're taking us anyway. Whether they'll destroy their system or destroy us by making profits go zero and nothing gets produced, or through environmental destruction or nuclear war or all of the above.
War really helps.
Right, that's where they're taking us. And their solution is not only not a solution for us, it's not even a solution for the system, but that's where it is going. And that's why I do believe we are headed towards an end unless workers can do something and create a new system that we can actually live with.
I think about capitalism, the system of capitalism is the production of commodities for exchange for profit, surplus value. Robots are not going to buy commodities. So you're undermining the basic systemic structure of capitalism. But each capitalist doesn't think about that. They think about how much profit they can make and how much speculation they can make in making more profit, making more capital. And I want to end this panel by talking about what's going on in San Francisco. Because the teachers have voted to have a strike, 97, 94%, 95%. Why? Because they're told that they're not going to get wages and benefits and conditions that they can survive on. I was just covering the strike in Richmond. Teachers are living at home of their parents because they can't afford to have their own house. Why? Housing speculation, companies, capitalist companies buy up all the houses for speculation, not for use. And people can't, in San Francisco, there's 60,000 empty flats. And yet in this strike, and this is important in San Francisco, they're having a strike in San Francisco about having decent wages and conditions for themselves and decent wage conditions for their students. And you have over 70 billionaires in San Francisco. In California, you have trillions of wealth of these billionaires. But the Democratic Party is not talking about an emergency session in the state legislature to make the billionaires pay for this economic crisis. They don't have enough money in California for schools. They don't have enough money in California for hospitals. Where is the money? It's held by the billionaires who run San Francisco, who run California, who really run the world. And they're telling us we're not going to be able to survive. I mean, what is the future? This is why young people are pessimistic. What is their future in this system? What is their future? You can't buy a house. You can't get health care. You can't get a job, a union job with seniority. Most workers are non-union. These are fundamental issues which are radicalizing the entire population. And I'm much more optimistic than Andrew. I think people can wake up, and people in this country have waken up. In San Francisco in 1934, there was a general strike. The last general strike was in Oakland in 1946. Working people haven't flexed their muscles yet, but they're being forced to because they have no other way of surviving, and I think that's really what's going on. I mean, public education, adjuncts, all the adjuncts can't get regular jobs. They're called freeway flyers. Freeway flyers, I mean, for faculty members. This is a systemic destruction of public education. I mean, the faculty, I mean, you can't get a regular job, you can't get seniority. I mean, these contradictions are because of the system that's not organized for people. That's really what it amounts to.